deep into a video game called Grand Theft Auto 3, where players assume the role of an escaped convict who hijacks cars, guns down pedestrians,
Aw, dude.
has sex with a prostitute,
You want me to shoot her?
Yes.
then earns extra points by killing her, so he can snatch back his money.
It's as close as you can get to like killing someone without like being arrested or really killing someone. Like killing someone without like being arrested or really killing someone.
Do you remember what it was like to be 14 years old? Well, if you were anything like me, you were a real menace, spending all your time stealing cars, performing hits for the mob, and beating the bejesus out of prostitutes.
Hire prostitutes. Club them to death.
Now that's not to say I literally did these things, but I did play a hell of a lot of Grand Theft Auto 3. A game that in 2001 I was convinced that it had to be the best game ever made. Never before had I experienced such freedom to raise as much hell as I wanted in a fully realized 3D urban environment. It was a living world populated with tons of NPCs walking the streets, spouting all kinds of crazy nonsense. There was a huge variety of vehicles to commandeer, a gritty crime story that had you interacting with a colorful and eccentric cast of characters, more guns and explosives than you could shake a stick at, and a huge city to explore at your leisure. And at the center of it all was you, a silent protagonist that at the time didn't even have a name, but eventually came to be dubbed Claude. We see him get betrayed by his partner at the start of the game, being left for dead after being shot in the midst of a bank heist, eventually ending up with a hefty prison sentence. But while he's being transported to Liberty City Penitentiary, along with a couple of other prisoners, he's inadvertently freed from captivity by the Colombian drug cartel, as they're abducting another prisoner. And soon after, he goes on a quest for revenge, working his way up the ranks of Liberty City's criminal underworld, killing his way to the top until he can finally come face to face with the woman that left him bleeding in an alley. GTA 3 was a game that had everything I was looking for in a game at the time of its release. The graphics, sound design, and gameplay were all amazing, and gamers and critics alike agreed this was a monumental achievement for Rockstar Games. Quite frankly, I was in love with GTA 3 when I was 14, as it completely enveloped my life for no less than a year, or at least until Vice City was released. But that was 24 long years ago. Many GTA games, as well as some fantastic GTA clones, have come and gone since then, and they all made some massive improvements over their predecessors, and expanded greatly in size and scope. I've enjoyed many games of the open world sandbox variety, but I never forgot how much I enjoyed good old GTA 3. So I decided to go back to it after not having played it for almost 2 decades, and find out for myself if it's still every bit as fun and entertaining as I remembered it being, or is it just a relic of the past, better off forgotten in favor of more contemporary open world games. I don't know, but my gut says maybe.
Tonight, it's just a game. Playing Grand Theft Auto 3.
I remembered the story of GTA 3 being an entertaining and humorous twist on your classic crime drama, like Goodfellas or Reservoir Dogs, which as I recall is also how some reviewers referred to it back in 2001. It's all about bank heists, gang warfare, crooked cops, and rubbing people out for a variety of criminal factions. And as a kid, I found all of this supremely engaging. But going back to it now, I realize that GTA 3 doesn't really have much of a story. I said earlier that Claude is climbing his way up Liberty City's criminal underworld in a quest to get even with the woman who betrayed him, which we later find out is Catalina, one of the heads of the local Colombian drug cartel. That's all a matter of interpretation though, as we don't know what's really motivating Claude. He's a silent protagonist, but also always has a completely blank expression on his face. So whatever he's thinking or feeling is completely unknown to the player. Replaying it now, it seems more like Claude will just do anything that pays. and getting even with Catalina is just a nice bonus. As soon as he escapes from police custody, he immediately begins working for the Italian mob on the recommendation of fellow escapee 8-Ball, and it just sort of snowballs from there, eventually having him work with the Yakuza and various other shady characters. But at no point is there any indication that Claude is motivated by anything other than completing his next job and collecting a paycheck. It's the characters around him that actually have motivations, and it's their actions that move the plot along, making most of them much more interesting than our actual protagonist, especially considering that their voices are provided by some pretty decent actors, including the likes of Joey Pantoliano, Michael Rappaport, Frank Vincent, Michael Madsen, Debbie Mazar, and something I only just realized, Twin Peaks' own Kyle MacLachlan as mega rich and ultra creepy Donald Love.
Nothing drives down real estate prices like a good old-fashioned gang war, apart from an outbreak of plague, but that might be going too far in this case.
Their performances, at least what little there is, are pretty good, and without them, there really wouldn't be a story in GTA 3. It'd be more like the first two games, where you're completing missions for different criminal factions for no other reason than that you're a criminal. The protagonists and stories of later GTA games would become way more fleshed out as the series progressed. But in GTA 3, the narrative is pretty bare bones, and obviously takes a backseat to the real main character of the game, which is Liberty City itself.
This is the curse of the mummy.
As soon as I booted up a new game, the first thing that brought a myriad of nostalgic memories rushing back to me was the sound design. As soon as that jazzy title theme started playing, I was getting those GTA 3 vibes again. Which, make no mistake, there's definitely a unique vibe to this game that you just don't get from anything else in the series, and a big part of that is the sound design. Once I actually started playing and flipping through the various radio stations, and of course listening to some of the random dialogue that the NPCs spew out, it was like going right back to being 14 years old again. And oddly enough, all of these years later, I still repeat certain lines of dialogue from this game without even really thinking about it. Just something I do when I'm bored and I can't stand the silence. So I'll mutter something like, "Yep, I've been drinking again," even though I hadn't played GTA 3 in like 20 years. Sometimes it's fun to just hang around an area and listen to all of the things these characters have to say. It gets pretty damn entertaining. Kinda like in real life, where if you pick the right spot, people watching can be good for a laugh. Speaking of dialogue, I mentioned this before, but the voice cast for this game is really good, featuring a bunch of veteran actors who deliver their lines with gusto. It's just a shame that the plot is so thin. Otherwise, some of them could have had a lot more to say. Considering you'll be spending a big chunk of time in this game driving though, the cornerstone of GTA 3's sound design really is the radio stations. And again, this is something that as soon as I started playing, a whole bunch of memories came rushing back to me. Some of the music here is really good and adds a lot to the experience. But the most memorable elements of the radio are the commercials and the DJs themselves, who are absolutely hilarious. The most notable being Laszlo, the host of Chatterbox, the talk radio station that has a colorful cast of special guests and weirdos calling in non-stop to shoot the shit with him, and mostly just annoy him. And this stuff is just pure gold. Still very funny and quotable to this day.
And now Freddy needs a nanny, because when Freddy's naughty, he needs to get spanked.
Well, there's some child psychologists who probably say that spanking can be harmful to a child's emotional development.
Absolute rot, Laszlo. It's lovely. Freddy needs a nanny. He needs a nanny, Laszlo, because Freddy's been a very naughty boy.
How old is your son?
Excuse me?
How old is your son?
I don't have children. I can't stand the little brats. But Freddy needs a nanny.
All right, that's enough of him. God, who gave this guy a green card?
It says a lot that in a game with such a wide variety of music, including EDM, reggae, jazz, opera, and some 80s classics, mostly I'd rather just listen to these people banter back and forth. And the character of Laszlo was so funny and memorable that he appeared in subsequent titles on the PS2. You could actually argue that he's the most memorable character in the game, despite only being a voice on the radio. Of course, you're not always in a car, and for those times when there's nothing but ambient noise around you, perhaps the sound of cars driving by, or rain falling overhead, The sound design in GTA 3 creates a kind of cozy feeling that's really hard to find in games these days. There's just something kind of calming about it, which I realize is ironic coming from a game that's all about committing crimes and raising hell. Not everything about GTA 3 has aged well, but the sound design is one thing I can say is still just as enjoyable now as it was back then. And speaking of not aging well, this is kind of tricky to talk about because GTA 3 is by no means a bad looking game, and when it was released in 2001 it was certainly impressive, at least in its scope, but the GTA games on the PS2 were never exactly great graphical showcases. The presentation and art direction were always more important than the actual quality of the visuals, and that's more apparent now. Obviously, when creating such a large environment and populating it with buildings, cars, and pedestrians, not everything is going to look its best. Around this time, there were much more visually impressive games than GTA 3. Stuff like Ico, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Devil May Cry, that featured highly detailed environments and character models. But they weren't offering the kind of go anywhere and do anything style of gameplay that GTA was. So the graphics in GTA had to be managed accordingly. It's kind of like in Lord of the Rings when Bilbo says he feels like butter spread across too much bread. That's how I think of the visuals here. The graphics had to be spread, so to speak, over a much wider surface. So they're a bit thin, looking pretty good from a distance but generally lacking detail when you take a closer look. The draw distance can be pretty abysmal at times, and there's plenty of pop-in and the occasional graphical glitches and clipping issues. But the most notable thing for me was the character models, which again look fine from a distance, but in cutscenes are segmented in a way that just makes them look kind of odd. Kind of like an action figure or something. Which I get is a result of working with limited resources, but still, it's something I notice now that I don't recall noticing as a kid. Or at least if I did notice, I didn't really care. Generally though, I think this is still a pretty nice looking game. The city, though in hindsight is very small compared to what came after, has a lot of charm to it, and the 3 separate islands that make up Liberty City each have a distinct personality, being modeled after different areas of New York City. And the first time leaving Portland to go into Staunton Island after seeing it off in the distance up to that point was a great feeling. And even now, just driving around the city to look at various landmarks or explore little side streets and back alleys is still really fun. Even though the visuals lack the wow factor that they had when I was a kid. Just like with the sound design, there's really a certain vibe you get from GTA 3 that's hard to put my finger on. Something about how it looks that gives me a cozy feeling. Especially at those times when you wander off to somewhere that's completely devoid of NPCs, and it's totally quiet except for the ambient noise of wind, rain, and the ocean. It's so oddly peaceful that I'll find myself seeking out little spots like this, even if there's nothing in them, just for the pleasure of visiting that part of the map. There's no doubt that the visuals and sound design are very complementary in GTA 3. You couldn't really appreciate one fully without the other. So despite the flaws that come with 24 years on its face, I can still very much appreciate the sights and sounds of this game. But of course, that was never the main selling point of GTA 3. It's worth mentioning that before GTA 3, I had played a handful of other games that featured a fairly large open world to explore and play around in. Most notably the first couple of driver games, or hell, the first couple of GTA games. But they didn't offer anything near resembling the scope, scale, and variety that GTA 3 did. My first time playing this game, the city felt so large and full of life. And it had tons of stuff to do, but mostly my favorite thing to do was just drive around fast as hell and cause as much chaos as possible. And that's still fun to this day, especially with the good old tank cheat. It's an absolute blast to wreak havoc all across Liberty City before putting in the wanted level cheat, and suddenly it's like nothing ever happened. Aside from that though, there are obviously plenty of missions to undertake that'll move the plot along bit by bit, such as it is. And that is something that honestly isn't quite as amusing as I remembered it being. The missions in GTA 3, with a few exceptions, are really short and for the most part pretty easy. A few of the ones that feature time limits can be a bit frustrating, but for the most part, the missions here either require you to drive to a certain location to retrieve something or kill someone, outrun the cops, or maybe chase down someone in a car or a boat. And a lot of these, especially maybe the first third, can be beaten on your first try without too much difficulty, some being almost insultingly easy, consisting of little more than a cutscene followed by a couple of minutes of gameplay. In fact, if you focus only on the main story missions, GTA 3 ends up being a pretty short game, which is a far cry from its sequels that you can play pretty much indefinitely, considering the abundance of side content that they feature, something that's notably lacking in GTA 3. Which, fair enough, this was Rockstar's first attempt at a sandbox game of this type, but once you take the story missions out of it, there's not really a lot to do here. You can find all of the hidden packages, of course, and play the various rampages dotted around the city. There are some unique stunts to pull off, and you can play mini games with the taxis and cop cars. But aside from that, Liberty City feels like a pretty empty place this time around, at least as far as purpose-driven activities are concerned. Again, it's still fun to just drive around and go crazy for a while, but this playthrough I found myself a bit surprised when the main game ended so quickly, and felt little motivation to continue on finding the remaining packages and so forth. Also, something that's very noticeable now is that all you have to rely on when navigating is the minimap. There's no full map of the city to reference in the pause menu, which does make navigation a bit more confusing. It's a basic feature of any open world game now, but it's easy to forget that it wasn't always available. Speaking on the basics of the gameplay though, I can say that the various vehicles are fun to drive, even if most of them get ripped apart and explode in no time flat, being very flimsy when compared to later games. And the gunplay is very rudimentary, though this was honestly never GTA's strong suit anyways. It's the sense of freedom and exploration that really makes the series, and that's something that later games would do much better. Vice City had more, San Andreas had arguably too much, and even the underappreciated side games Liberty City Stories and a personal favorite of mine, Vice City Stories, gave you plenty more to do as well. As it stands, GTA 3 was an amazing first step for this series. Even though it's the third entry for most people, this is where Grand Theft Auto really begins, and it was a groundbreaking title for this gameplay style, laying the groundwork for not only future GTA games, but a long list of others that copied its gameplay in some way, some of which also have the distinction of being amongst my favorite games from the early and mid-2000s. So while the gameplay in GTA 3 and the game as a whole doesn't have quite the luster that it did when I was 14, I still had a lot of fun playing through it again after all these years, flaws and all. If you haven't played it in a long time, it's definitely worth going back to, if for no other reason than to get that quick hit of nostalgia. If you've never played it before though, and instead were introduced to the series via GTA 5 or possibly 4, GTA 3 won't impress you all that much. But it's still worth at least giving it a chance and seeing where all this madness initially kicked off. As for me, playing through GTA 3 again has lit a fire under my ass, and now I want to revisit all of them, which is exactly what I plan to do. So until next time, try to stay out of trouble.
Sayonara, hookers.
Awesome!